Hi, my name is Swissina, and I am a filmmaker and actress. And you are tuned into Candid Conversations with the Self-Esteem Queen and host, Fiona Sharon Huff. Get ready for a dynamic heart-to-heart talk where you can truly build your self-esteem and be reminded that you are a qualified woman embodying excellence now.
Great evening, and thank you for tuning in to Candid Conversations with the Self Esteem Queen. And I am your host, the Self Esteem Queen. I got a question for you. Do you feel safe in your relationship? Are you being seen and heard? Are your boundaries being respected or crossed? Feeling safe should never be optional. Your emotional, mental, physical, and personal safety matter. And when something doesn't feel right, it's important to recognize the signs, trust yourself, and take the necessary steps to make safety priority. So this evening, I am talking with Zoleka Nicole Sparks. She is affectionately known as Boss Sparks, the CEO of Boss Sparks Inc. And we're going to have this candid, heart-to-heart conversation just about that very question. Are you safe? Boss?
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for joining me this evening. I knew that you were the perfect person. We actually had a conversation about this, and in our conversation, it just made sense for us to bring the conversation to the people to talk about this. You have so much experience and wisdom that we just had to do this evening for such a time as this. So for those who, well, many people know you. But for those who may not, it may be a smidgen of people that don't, tell the listening audience who is Boss Sparks.
Hello, everyone. So, Boss Sparks is a business consultant and strategist of over 35 years. And I help businesses, small businesses, get started, scale, as well as I do project management and vendor management as projects. I have multiple certifications, and I'm an award winning at what I do. And we're coming up on two more awards that I'll be getting next month. Doing what I do, so and that'll make 20 altogether. So just being able to give back to the community in the way that I think us women as entrepreneurs, we really need us to come together and really talk to each other, and not with all of the fluff and all of that other stuff, but just really get down to the bare bones of, things that can make us better. And being able to have that solid circle is important.
So, I know we was having this conversation talking about relationships, right? Why is it important for a person specifically, because the platform does empower women? Why is it important for women to feel safe in a relationship, and what does that safety look like?
Well, when you look at a lot of the issues that are happening with women and relationships now, we're focusing on, I feel like we're focusing on the wrong things. As a sex therapist, I've been able to really look at and talk with different couples and people who are in intimacy withdrawal with their partners, but it ends up looking at the work that we need to do as women, but also what we accept. So when we originally meet that person, um, you think about, and I'm gonna take y'all back to thinking about back to the first time you fell in love with your husband, your person, your partner, whoever that person is in your life. And what got you in that moment? Was it the way he smelled, the way he was put together, the way she smelled, or whatever? But also what she said that tapped into what you were looking for to go into that relationship with them. Those pieces right there from the beginning started that person feeling safe to go further. And when I say safe, it's like, okay, this person has, similar with what I'm looking for. They're talking the right things. Let's go further and see if that continue to make me feel safe, as we build. And I think we need to start approaching our relationships and how we interact with the significant other like that. Once we start doing that, we start looking at the moment when we start feeling unsafe, you know. And usually that first time is more of being heard,
Okay.
because that's the one thing for women is to feel safe is to be heard. So that means if I tell you I need certain things and you start doing them, that means I'm feeling safe with you because you're hearing me. You're not cutting me off. You're not, oh, yeah, 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 and doing the opposite. You're starting to listen to me and you're using what it takes to, even wheel me into this relationship with you and build upon you.
So when a woman is not being seen or heard, uh, should her first step be to just remind her partner, how she's feeling, or what should she do? Should she just, go ghost, just because if she's already told him before how she's feeling and she's still not receiving that, like, what should she do?
Well, the first thing is that's your red flag right there that something is wrong. And a lot of times that happens after you've been with that person for a long time. It could be a couple of years down the road. Most of the time, it's a couple of years down the road. You done got comfortable, but you also changing. So that communication at the beginning that you started feeling safe with, that's work on both ends that has to continue, because as you're communicating, you're also communicating about how each other is changing, within themselves, within, we know that what we like right now, we're not going to like a year from now. We're not going to like, because we're constantly changing or it's going to evolve. So part of that communication of feeling safe is to be able to understand how to evolve with my partner, and that starts from feeling safe from the beginning with the communication. Now a lot of times there's a breakdown, like I said, after maybe the third year. Everybody's gotten complacent, they've gotten, and now they're feeling where, okay, I'm changing a little. Okay, so I'm gonna tell him, I'm gonna tell her that I want to do something different. I want to do da da da. And instead of it being where understanding of, ooh, they're changing, they're doing different things or whatever, it's like, well, where did that come from? And I'm pretty sure a lot of the listeners probably have arrived at that, when they tried to come to their partner and say they want to do something different, or why don't we do something different or whatever, and they didn't see it coming. That lets you know that somewhere in your communication, something lacked. One of the things with my partner, is to be able, what I call the gut check. And that's to be able to sit down in different periods. Usually it's like every other month. And I'm like, are we good? Are you good? Am I doing what you need? There's some different things that I'm seeing that I'm gonna need from you. That's kind of, going to the wayside. And you used to do it, and we start having those conversations on why you stopped doing it, or it's like, oh, okay, you stopped doing it because you changed. Okay, well, I changed on over here, so how do we meet each other each way? There has to be consistent conversation. A lot of times that comes with having your dates, as partners, being able to come away was so clearly, we would be in the bed, me and my sister would be in the bed, but my mom and dad's bedroom was close by. And there were nights where they would talk all night about just different things they want to do the next day. They would discuss things, blah blah blah. And they would be in the privacy of their bedroom, but they had those think tanks, and they did it periodically. I would say at least a couple times a week. They were good with communicating. Even if it went left, and my mom didn't like the way he did things or whatever, they were able to discuss, and so I think we miss that with relationships, that we get so complacent with relationships that that safeness ends up going out the window when we get comfortable. We should never be so comfortable that we stop that communication, because that communication is our safe space, especially for women.
Well, I like what you said about that check in. So, do you think that the conversation of your love language should be discussed, and at what point should that be? So, for somebody who's just starting out, I would assume that that's a conversation they need to have from the beginning, so that I guess expectations and what they want and what their partner would want are laid out.
There's something that's is out there, that when you're dating, before you make any major decisions on going into marriage or getting engaged and everything, is to have 1,000 hours of communication. That means every time you meet, you have questions that you're asking each other to learn about each other. A lot of times we don't do that in building our relationship. We're going out on dates, or we're doing this, we're getting drunk, we're doing this or whatever, and we're not asking those questions. And then next thing you know, the communication goes, because now sex is involved. Got together, sex is involved and everything like that. So you settle for mediocre communication. In that 1,000 hours, that means every time you go on a date, every time y'all are together or whatever, it's questions that you want to ask. Where are we? Am I giving you what you need? Are you happy? What else can we do? What are some of the things that keep the spark going? What is, you always have those questions to ask whenever y'all are dating, or just getting to know each other. Back in the day, it was called courting.
Right,
And courting, my mom and dad, when they courted, my dad had to go to her parents' house, and her parents sat in the living room with them. So there had to be questions. You didn't have, you couldn't really do anything else other than watch TV. So, questions, the conversation, all of that stuff is important. And it was important to the parents to hear, because they wanted to make sure that child is safe.
right,
You know what I'm saying? We
right,
we missed that part. It's like, oh yeah, the parents was in the room. We couldn't do anything. Well, you're not supposed to. But there's a safeness that the parents want to make sure that that person is going to do right by their child. So that's where that comes from. So now that we have evolved, that 1,000 hours is important. Now we don't have the parents in the room, but every time we meet up, it should be having a conversation. That's where coffee dates are important. And we try to take away from that, because it's all about, going on an expensive date and doing this or whatever. I enjoy the Barnes and Noble dates, or the coffee dates or whatever. You have no excuse but to talk. In those moments, you're getting some coffee or whatever, you're looking straight at each other. None of the fancy food is in front of you and everything like that. The money is not in your mind about that, but it's actually that part, is getting to know, asking the questions, really enjoy having the conversation. You know, that's the biggest thing, And so when you don't do that, you don't mix that in. And a lot of time we're going in with, I want to go on this day, I'm getting dress and I want to go on this date to this fancy restaurant and everything like that. Now it's the money issue is getting involved. And that
Mm.
money issue can taint a lot when it comes to communication because we will deal with a lot for that money, you know. But now we're seeing that it's not worth it, as you see social media and different things that are happening with different women, even the beautiful ones that have had a lot of work and everything done to them, you know, they get cheated on. You know, something is missing. You know, they're not able to do what they need to do to keep them. You know, and after a while, they realize that all of the glam and everything like that goes out the window because the whole reason why they actually came to you was because of looks and everything like that. And sometimes it's up to us to break that down. Yeah, I'm beautiful and everything like that, but let's have this conversation. We're not hearing enough of that, you know, and so that's where a lot of times the rest of the safeness goes out the window. So at the bottom line for our safeness is communication and how we build that communication to continue to feel safe. Once that communication is blocked, that's it. You know, now it's like we're seeking. We're in the seeking mode. Okay, well, he used to do this, he's not doing this. Maybe I need to look at his phone. Maybe I need to do this. Now we're in search mode because we're searching for that safeness that left us from the beginning. Or maybe we didn't have it at all.
You know, I think about my godparents, and they got together when they were 17 and 18 years old, and when I tell you all these many years later, they are in love. They respect each other. They listen to each other. There is no one that is more important than my godmother to my godfather. Like
Mm-hmm.
he still calls her, his queen.
Mm-hmm.
And when so the rule is when we come over to the house, we go into the family room. That's where everybody comes. We have the TV, games, and so forth. You have to put your phone down, put it on silent.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot have it out. The only person that can have it out is my godfather. That would be because of emergencies. But
Mm-hmm.
we're talking, we're laughing, we're engaging, in conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and to get to 50 years, they celebrated their 50-year anniversary. To get to that point, it had to be some safety involved because my my godmother, she retired, I think about I want to say about 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and she's good money. She is treated like a queen. There is nothing uh, that she can't say or do or request that he doesn't honor, because
Mm-hmm.
he listens to her, he pays attention to her. And it's just so cute. They remind me of, like, teenagers in love. But it's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful to see, and it's a great example,
Mm-hmm.
of just how they listen to each other and that they communicate with each other. And you can't get over on one. They
Right.
are a unit for real. So I
Right.
look at that, and I honor that, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's important that that's the safeness. That's part of the safeness is one. In order to get to that point, you have to consistently have that communication. They also have to make sure they see you. He sees her. He sees her for what she's able to bring, what she's able to do. He trusts that she prepares that household for them. She shows up the way he needs. He shows up the way she needs, and you consistently work at that. Will it always be roses or whatever? Because, like I said, as we start changing, it shakes up a little that what we have been used to. So when it comes to that shake up and you start making changes, if you already are understanding that person and what that person is needing, and if those needs change, then you're able to talk through it and find out, okay, for this. So it's important that, we look at, just being able to understand first and foremost the communication. First and foremost, after communication is the respect of that person, whether it's that man or that woman, respecting them for what they're bringing to the table, what they're bringing to the relationship, respecting that. And with that respect comes that we got to do the work to show our partners that we mean business, that we stand on business for what we said we're going to do for you, or we're going to do together, and everything like that. That continues to build that safeness. Now, when that safeness is broken, that's where we stop communicating on how much we've changed, if there's any issues, if they, and we get away from, being cushioned to be able to have the conversation. Sometimes those hard conversations, you got to just break and just have those hard conversations. And, you know, when you start doing that, now you're ruffling feathers. A lot of people don't want that. They want to continue to have this that smoothness. But sometimes those hard conversations is the thing that shakes it up and realigns what y'all have so that y'all can go to the next level of what y'all are building. But so many times relationships get caught right there and they never survive. They never, because they didn't realize the bottom line of, I no longer feel safe with you because you stop supporting me. You stop doing what you've been doing, and you didn't explain to me why. It ain't that they stopped doing what they were doing, but explain to me why. Explain to me how you have changed. I'm allowing you to change, and you're allowing me to change, but we have to address, how we're going to meet each other with our changes. That doesn't happen. They end up changing. They end up, not knowing how to address the other person, and then they step out, and then now, it's all, crazy. And the only way you end up getting back to that moment is when somebody gets caught. Now you don't created a whole thing.
Right.
And that where you have to have that hard conversation. Why didn't, and the first thing they says, why didn't you tell me? What did I do wrong? What did I, so that means the communication was broken and just
Right.
thrown away. And so even in our like you said, the love language, and the love language is a part of how we speak to each other. So if it get to a point where each other is trying to speak to one another, and somebody's raising their voice, or they're not talking in a lower voice, or you know um they're, well, why would you say this and this, that, and not listening with open ears, and with an open mind, it starts making it difficult for you to be able to come to that person. There's a breakdown that starts to break down, and that starts where it starts getting unsafe. So the thing is to have, what are your safety measures? You have to have safety
Mm.
measures in your relationship. If things start that, you can even have something that's coded like red, yellow, green, when it starts, coming to that point where it's like, okay, we're in the yellow, because I got questions. I'm noticing some things are changing. What do I need? How do I need to change with it? Or did you realize you were changing? Because sometimes we don't even realize we change. It's just something that's simple, because we're changing with the times. We're changing with our job. We're changing with a new business. You know, um, our time has changed. It's this, of how we spend time with each other. We don't have a conversation about that. So the bottom line of it is going to be, I would say, the communication. That's the main number one thing of feeling safe. And to continue to feel safe, we have to continue to build on our communication with each other.
I really love that. And I don't think that we were necessarily taught um, to one date with intentionality, to present those questions. So now let me just go back. You said 1,000. Did you say 1,000 hours?
Mm-hmm. 1,000 hours.
That has to be intentional. You know, you have to really want to dig in to knowing a person, and really get to the heart of who they are to have an effective relationship. So, you
Mm-hmm.
know, if you all are tuning in and listen
You usually
to
can
this,
get
listen,
right.
a
You usually can.
thousand hours,
Uh-huh. Usually can
you
get to that in a year. I would say a cool year, year and a half, you can get to hitting 1,000, depending on how much you're like just into communicating. Cause you figure how many dates are you going on a week? If it's between 1 to 3, and every time you go on that date, you're asking 5 questions. And
mm,
how long is that date that you'll be talking? So sometimes you could be on a date for 3 or 4 hours, and all y'all doing is talking. You're really enjoying each other talking and everything like that. Then you go from talking to building, and then learning about our love languages and sex and everything like that's if you are doing it intentional. The problem is nowadays is everything is built on sex. You cannot start building if you automatically have sex with somebody,
right.
because now you're building on lust. You're building, but you're building on lust. You're building on, okay, the sex is amazing. I need that. Let me see what else she can offer. It doesn't work that way. I mean, you got to be able to, and now you're consistently having sex, but you're talking less. So you're communicating in a different way that, you're not prepared for at the beginning of your relationship if you're really trying to build a long lasting relation with a person. And if you think about it, if you've done it that way, at some point there is miscommunication with you understanding each other, because you never understood each other in the beginning. You just
In the
understood
first
each other
place, right.
sexually. So we have to get around. That was one thing when I was dating that I had parameters in order to date me. Then we have to, if you want to get to know me and everything like that, we would not have sex immediately. But if we did have sex immediately, that was it. We just had sex. You don't get to come back after you had sex with me and say, I want to build with you now.
Mm,
That was my parameter. I would never do that.
okay.
So I said, choose wisely.
Choose
Because
wisely.
if I felt like, I'm a woman, if I felt like maybe I want to get with him for the night or whatever, you know, then I'm gonna do that. But I already know if that happens, that's it. So you might be a homie lover friend or something like that, but it won't be something where I'm going to be building a lifetime with you, and we're going to be building businesses together and everything like that. Because in order to do that, we have to have A+ communication to be able to understand each other, even in the entrepreneurial setting. We talk about as entrepreneurs, it's different. and
Yeah.
and now when we date or when we have to, they have to have a business. They have to understand business. They have to understand where, how we moving, how we spend our time, how how many hours we work, how we gonna
A lot.
craft that time for them. You got to understand this, that, and the other. So an entrepreneur can't just get with an ordinary mom, because
Right.
now you got the pressure. Why are you out so late? Why are you out? Blah blah blah. Is he has a harder time understanding you as an entrepreneur, and a lot of people don't understand that. When you get to certain levels, it's a certain way, a certain type of person that you have to change your what you're looking for out of. So definitely when I got to the point when I was an entrepreneur, I had parameters there. It was like, okay, we gotta build, we gotta be an entrepreneur. This is how I work, this, that, and the other, but I will be able to have time for you. I will be able to do this. I will be able to do that, and it's a different conversation. But if you get somebody that is just working a 9 to 5 and you're an entrepreneur, it's going to be hectic. It's an uphill battle. I'm not saying that you won't survive, but it's an uphill battle, and it adds pressure to you as an entrepreneur trying to get to that next level because your significant other has to understand, how you move, how you're building, what you're building, that whole nine, and that you're doing it for the betterment of the future that's coming up. And me and you talked about that when it comes to you and dating. It's like, okay, you do know now the person that you're looking for gotta be in business.
Right.
Gotta be in business and everything like that. So we talked about, the change in the parameters that you would have when it comes to dating, and everything like that. So that starts the safe talk. If that person can understand you and how you move, and they're willing to learn and everything like that, now that person becomes safe to you to say, okay, seems like he understands the simple things of what I brought to him. Now let's get to the nitty gritty, and let me show him how I'm doing business. Come walk with me. Come meet me at this. This is what I'm doing. This is how I usually do, or whatever. How will we arrive at the pull-ups, I call them? Hey, what you doing? I'm over here and this, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I can pull up. And you pull up for a hug, kiss, coffee, ice cream, da, 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 whatever it is, something simple and quick. But y'all start learning how to find that time to continue to still build and communicate. That's the difference in, being an entrepreneur and dating as an entrepreneur, and then dating as, a regular person that, has a 9 to 5 and everything.
And you brought up a good point, and yes, we do have those conversations about that. And I remember I was dating someone, and the way that I work is, I'm up in the wee hours of the morning, and I'm that's that's when I'm most creative, right? So it's like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll get up, I'll go work out, and then I get busy, whether it's on a computer or I'm writing, whatever the case is. So I was dating this person, and I had went to the living room, because again, one, I had been used to being, with myself, by myself. So, I move how I move because that's
Mm-hmm.
just what I do. And he was triggered by he had been in a previous relationship. Now I didn't know this at the time, but he had been in a previous relationship where his former significant other would go into the living room and end up having a whole relationship with somebody. So they would be on the phone in the living room while he was, was asleep. And so it was a trigger, but it's like those are not conversations that we had so that I would know. And again, how I move is everybody knows, I'm up at the crack of dawn, I'm working and so
Mm-hmm.
forth, I make a post, I do a video. And it was like, it was a trigger, but it was like he was attacking me, but I did not know. And we ended up not being a good fit because of just how I operate. And there's nothing wrong with a 9 to 5 or even
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurship. I honor and respect both of them, but like you
Mm-hmm.
said, you have to be uh simpatico with the
Mm-hmm.
person that you're going to be with. You both have to understand what you present, and what you have going into it, and have those conversations. But you when you know better, you do better. And
Right.
so because of that, I realized, oh well, whoever, and I think I always knew the person who I needed to be with.
Mm-hmm.
needs to be, a powerhouse like I am.
Right,
They have to
exactly,
be an entrepreneur,
exactly.
because it's just not going to work. Because not only, am I an entrepreneur, and I'm getting even more into the fashion side of my brand, which, if you notice, is cute elephant tie that I made from the Timey Extra collection. Like, I'm on the go. God has been waking me up 2 o'clock in the morning for the past 2 weeks, and
Hmm.
I get up and I create. And like the commercial says for the military, I do more before 6 a.m. than most people do all day.
Most
We
of us
both do,
do.
right?
I mean, I'm up at 4. I have to be up at 4. I run 4 businesses, so I have to be up early enough to be able to handle everything, and then by 12, I'm out in the street, to meet up and different things like that. But that goes back to the 1,000 hours. So you can imagine in those 1,000 hours how you will be able to break down triggers, needs, blah blah blah. What are some of the things you think? What are some of the things, like, come walk with me, come see how I do things, and blah blah blah. Okay, so how do you feel like that would affect you building with me and different things like that? So that's where that 1,000 hours comes from. You be able to talk to them, and you be able to see that ahead of time instead of y'all getting into a whole. When you start seeing those red flags, start asking those questions, then you can go ahead and just cut it and be like, yeah, this not gonna work out. And that could be the third by the third date. There's different questions that I have too that I would say, these are the ones you would ask in the first 3 dates, so you can know whether it's going to be viable for y'all to keep going.
Right.
And so if you went ahead and asked those and you saw the red flags, or you saw it was going to be an issue for him or whatever, if you could. Now sometimes people mask it, they come with that mask and they mask it pretty well, and then you're in it and then they start changing up. We can never be scared to, when we start seeing those major red flags, to cut it. Because if you don't, it not only affects your life, it affects your business. Because, like I told you, I said, as your business is growing and everything, that person now, you have to strategize that person into your business. You know what I'm saying? Because now that you built this on your own, how do you add this other person in with what you built? How does he add you in to what he's built?
Right.
So it's a conversation. Remember, we're getting somebody that's an entrepreneur as well, or that understands how to deal with an entrepreneur. So you both have to kind of figure out, okay, well, I will be able to add some value to you on your business here, and you will be able to add business with me over here. And let's see, when will I be able to pop up at your job? I want you to be able to walk with me when I get ready to do this with my job, or show different things, or have conversations on that date. It's like, okay, our next date is going to be a work date, which we'll get to learn about each other's businesses and seeing the flow. Because sometimes that flow might be so off that you're not going to be able to find no kind of time, or the time that you do find is not going to be enough for either one of y'all, because y'all might want more. For me, because even though I have 4 businesses, for that person, my husband and my partner, that I can make time. That's already added in. So I can make time to be able to do this, and this, or have the date, or be able to go out of town, or be able to do this or whatever. Because we've had those conversations. I'm able to do that. You know, but we have to have those conversations, on where we are. My husband usually, he doesn't go out, he doesn't go to those different events with me or whatever. So being able to have somebody that goes with me to those events or whatever, that's important. So now I have to arrive at, how do we fix this so that I can still have that peace and flow that I need to continue to keep going.
Right.
Because if I'm working at a deficit, then my business, my home, everything is in
It's going to be
deficit.
impacted.
And then
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm feeling unsafe. That adds on to it. Now, it's a lot. So being able to begin with the communication part and asking those hard questions. You got some guys that won't even will just tell you everything that you want to hear, and we talked about that. It takes the power from us when they do that. Tell us what we want to hear instead of telling us the truth that,
Right.
yeah, you got certain things that I really don't feel like is going to fit into my life, but I'm going to deal with it type thing, or, oh, okay, she don't have these things, but she got this, and I really want to hit it. So they're going to tell you whatever they can to do that, and then, but if we're asking the right questions, we can counteract that from the beginning. But again, we look at looks, we look at body, we look at all of that before we actually dive deep into the importance of communication and really getting to know. You got to fall in love with not only loving you, getting to know yourself, and we're constantly on that, on that ride. We're constantly getting to know ourselves. So we have to also be on that ride when we add that person to our life, getting to know them as well. That's not a one-time thing. It's a consistent thing. You're consistent looking at how each other moves, how we move together, the whole nine, that whole thing. To be able to, like, I met one person, and just how he, just when I first met him, just how he, just like, it was from a hello. You had me from hello. I felt safe. It was the energy.
Mm.
It was, hello, love. That type with the endearment. So it's like, okay, okay, he's all. And then he was intentional about getting my number. We walked away from each other. We didn't exchange numbers, but we walked away from each other. But before I left, he made sure he had my number, feeling safe. He followed up with what he said. Then he said, okay, he texted me, did you get home okay? He's adding to the safeness. Thank you. Yes, I am this time. Can we talk tomorrow? Sure, we can talk tomorrow. So you're not automatically just reaching out to me. You're asking, can I come into your world?
Mm.
Safe, automatic, just like, oh, this, And then he followed up and did it again, adding more to that safeness, you know. Then, we start having the conversations, you know, and okay, when can I see you? Safeness, you're showing you wanting me, you're turning that on, you're doing so that adds to the safeness as well, so now it's like, when you hear the voice and everything, it's like, you say the person's name, it's like, well, he just does it for me, because he has not switched it up. He continued to stay on that journey, and he continues to have, when you have a conversation every time y'all meet, it's like, how was your day, love? Look, I'm having a bad day. This is going on or whatever. And you're listening and you're speaking to the king in him, just like he would speak to the queen in you if you're having a lot of different things. So now he adds another rung to that safeness, because now he's listening, and he's taking in what how your day is and what's going on and this, that, and the other. You're able to talk to him. And when you talk to him, he regurgitates what you said. Safe. And if he continues to, now you're open to be able to talk to him about anything. Safe. You added transparency to it. And
Well,
then the coup de grace is, even if it's something that might piss him off, you still feel comfortable to talk to him about it. That's the ultimate safety, because sometimes we're scared to even talk about the hard things. So if you're with someone that you can bring the hard things to them, and y'all are able to find a solution to them, that's long time living right there, if you continue to build in that way.
Well, let's go back. I keep going back to these questions. How do you develop the questions? Where do you get the questions from? How do you know how to ask those hard questions, or what questions to start with, so that you can develop that rapport to feel safe, or to understand what safe means to you.
Do you even know what you want?
You said what?
Do you even know what you want?
Mm.
So you got to
Okay.
know what you want.
Right.
A lot
Okay.
of times we
That
let
makes
men
sense.
lead us into our relationships, and then we don't understand why we at a deficit because we're not having the conversations. You know, we might probably felt safe at the beginning, but we didn't continue the conversations, and then now, because we felt that little bit of safe, he came on in and he said, okay, well, I'm going to do this, and you're going to do this with me, and you're going to do this or whatever, and slowly but surely you're losing yourself because you didn't state what you needed. It's got to be leveled.
Right. Okay.
What do you need? I need this, blah blah blah. Okay, I need this. How do we come to that conclusion? How do we, we're not doing that. So we live in a society where women don't know what they want, and they feel like they do. But when you talk about what you want and need, that's two different things. When you look at your needs, what do you need to continue to do what you do every day, business wise? Holding yourself up to get through the day. You got kids, different. What do you need from that man so that you can be, you can have that peace, to do and move the way you need to move. A lot of us can't even answer that question. Men can't even answer. What do you need from me? They can't answer. Oh well, well, I like. No, 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 no. What do you need?
Mm.
I
That's
know
good.
what I can
That's a
bring
good
to the
starter.
table. Right. I know what I can bring to the table. I see that you have business. I know I can bring this to the table, but do you need me to? There's something with country on the country Wayne. He said something about one of his skits. He said, "I can give you, I give you money every month, and the only thing I ask you to do is cook for me." That says volumes.
Mm.
That says volumes. And that girl had got so caught up, and she even admitted herself, she got so caught up in the money and being at his house and his big house and everything like that she lost sight of cooking for him. And he said, you ain't even had to cook for me every day. You could just cook for me, you know, um, once a week. I got a chef, but just show that you appreciate me and even my health, even that says volume. I don't think people really, when they were looking at that skit, they really took that in. They was, oh, he's a player, he's doing blah 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 blah. But this is an accomplished man that's a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times they don't want much. Most men don't want much.
Right.
They want you to speak to the king, they want to be able to talk because the world don't give them a chance to talk about what they're going through. So to be able to come to that woman, get a good meal, be able to be heard, be able to get that pat on the back, that back rub, and be like, go on back out there, baby, and I got you, I'm here, type thing, and vice versa. You know, that's what we miss. And so that's part of the safety as well. Is just knowing what we want. If we go in and we don't know what we want and need, safety is already broken right there because it got to
Right.
be an understanding from the beginning. If you don't have that, what are you building on? You building on
That makes
shaky
perfect
ground,
sense.
right? And we know when we talk about safety and safe and everything like that, what's more important to a house in order for that house to feel safe? Foundation. You got to set that foundation with me. Y'all got to talk about it. You got to consistently talk about it. What are you actually building? Did you ever even tell him that you want to build with him, or you'll just tell him like, oh, yeah, I love being around you. I hear that a lot. I love being around you. I love what you do for me. Blah blah blah. Instead of saying, I just love the way I still get butterflies when I see you. When you say yes, love. How you doing? That does it for me. For you to even send a message just to check on me if I haven't, we've been so busy, we haven't been able to see each other. You keeping it going so that we can keep, that fire going. You know, that's important. That's important to that safety. That's how you know. You have to know what you actually want and need from that person that's coming into everything that you build.
That's some good stuff. Listen, I have learned, every time we talk anyway, you always dropping some nuggets and some jewels, and I got to put them, in the arsenal,
Yes.
but you, yeah, listen, because that 1,000 hours and the questions that really got me. So I'm telling you, if you all are tuning in, listen, those hours and questions are a game changer. Because I have a direct, connection, a relationship with you. We gonna, what I'm saying, we gonna have to tap into them questions.
Yeah, that's the one that'll give me a chance to say, one of my businesses, my newer business is Noir Whispers, Inc. And with Noir Whispers, we talk about sexual wellness. And part of sexual wellness is intimacy with ourselves, not just with our partner, but with ourselves. Do we even know our intimate self? And we'll probably come on and talk about that too. But knowing your intimate self is knowing how to be able to talk to people about what your needs and wants is. And then also being able to tap into it with that significant other so that you will be able to be good all the way around. But we also will have different classes on different topics. And one of those topics would be, did you get your 1,000 hours in? And you will be able to get those questions. Also, the timeline of making sure that you have a checklist that you've asked those pertinent questions that were, and it's not even just the questions, but the areas of questions that you need to start asking.
Okay.
So and for the first 2 months, you should be in the realm of intimacy, talking about intimacy, or you should be in a realm of just the basic questions of your career flow, or your home flow. How is your home flow? Do you have kids? How is that going? How is that? And then you talk about that. So it's more of that. And then those questions are going to come to you on, you know, what, what other question, a follow-up question might come from the answer that person has given. And then you have follow-up or whatever. So it's not really like just a, um, I got all these questions
Right.
I'm going to ask you, but it's more of asking in that arena. Everybody's different, so it's customized. So depending on what your careers are doing, and how y'all will intermingle. Some people travel a lot. Will I be able to travel with you? And will we be able to do blah blah blah? Will I be? It's everybody's different, so you want to
Right.
meet each other where they are. So we'll be having Noir Whispers Inc. We'll be having different classes on that. I also do couples and individual counseling on your intimate self, any issues when it comes to like menopause and different things like that. We'll have different
Yes.
topics on that. Why I'm having the dryness and everything like that. Eating healthier after a certain age, or even as an entrepreneur, what's your wellness, just period, and then that your wellness adds to your sexual wellness. Because what you eat feed your wounds. So, we'll be talking about a lot of those different things.
I love it. I love it. Listen, we have had an amazing conversations, even a lot that we've unpacked. So make sure that you all share this, repost it, listen to it again. I always listen to the podcast for myself afterwards so that I can just kind of, you know, just marinate on what was said. And you said a whole lot, even, as we're talking. So I appreciate you
I
as
appreciate you
always
too.
for coming.
Look, we've been sis for what, 15 years?
Yes.
15 years. And, I'm my sister's keeper. And we both evolved with assisting each other in our businesses and everything to get to these certain levels that we're at. But we also, have seen each other go through relationships and different things like that. So as much as I speak it, you also have seen it, and how I actually put, because, I don't live a conventional life when it comes to dating and everything like that. That's a whole nother, thing. But when it comes to just all the way around relationships, there is that common denominator. And if I could bring it all the way in, is feeling safe. Does that person that you're building with feel safe?
And we're back.
I can't hear you.
Okay, let's see. Can you hear me now? Okay. Not sure what happened. Let me see. Can you hear me better? Let's see. Okay, can you hear me now? Are you able to hear me now? So you can't hear me? Something went on with the mic.